Here to talk more about that, we have Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer on the phone with us. Colonel, thanks for being with us. One of the things that struck me about Bernard Cazeneuve's comments is that he said, we had no information was communicated by any European agency before the attack about this person's travels, about Abaoud's travels, even though he was on the radar of some. What does that tell you about the state of intelligence sharing and gathering in Europe?
Well, there's two things, and I want to bring us back home for a second, too. I very much respect Commissioner Matthews, but I think he's underplaying what's going on. This very common Minister of Justice is radically different ISIS is. And tells me is that ISIS has found ways to essentially go undetected by intelligence services. So this is why we all have to take a great deal of interest in what's going on, and that means here too. So let's pause and think for a second what he said. He said basically that while we saw him kind of on the radar, we were not able to detect his activities. So that means we may well be observing people right now. Bill Bratton may be well observing people in New York and environs right now that look fairly normal, but all of a sudden they're able to do an act of terror. So this is where I don't want to say this to get people all in a tizzy. I'm just saying this is another reason we have to take more now than the past 10 years the idea of being vigilant, very close to the heart, and we all should be very much respectful of the fact that ISIS is not your father's terrorist organization. These folks are much more effective than Al-Qaeda ever thought of being.
Lieutenant Colonel, my question is, can the EU, can they come together in time to start sharing intelligence before another attack like this happens?
They're going to have to, and I think this is where they really ought to look at reinvigorating NATO. NATO was designed as an intelligence collection and sharing organization. We spent a lot of time during the Cold War, and I'm old enough to have been there working with the French and others back in the 80s on this. So we do have the mechanisms to do it. The question becomes the political will for those nations to do the sharing. I think it's clearly in their best interest to set up these mechanisms to reactivate what we had during the Cold War, not for purposes of facing off against Russia, but for the purposes of making Europe secure. Clearly, I agree with President Hollande that this is a war. The war has started. It's time we start acting in unison as both the European community and the American intelligence community to share information effectively to stop these folks before they do more attacks.
If you are the U.S. government, and specifically if you are a member of the U.S. intelligence community, and you are hearing this sort of debate afterwards about how it is that intelligence was not shared, what do you then do? What are your next steps if you are a U.S. intelligence official to try and ensure that the same thing doesn't happen with the United States?
Well, three things. First, you've got to consider the lessons learned by the French. The French, as they're going in real time right now, had made mistakes. I mean, they did stop other attacks, no doubt, but they didn't go far enough to vet out, to ferret out those networks. So we, the American intelligence community, must be watching with great clarity what the French are doing so we can learn from their mistakes to make sure we don't make them. Secondly, Bill Bratton kind of hit it nail on the head. We've got to take seriously the threat that something could happen here. New York is the biggest target on the planet. With that said, I'm driving right now in Washington, heading to your studio. This is number two, and ISIS has said both cities are going to be targeted. There's no reason to doubt them based on the fact every threat they've made so far, they have made good on. And third, and more importantly, we have to let the gloves off the intelligence community. Often policy holds back our intelligence and special operations community for purposes of political appearance rather than dealing with the facts on the ground. Look, we've got to take seriously penetrating both Al-Qaeda and, more importantly, ISIS now as a network. To defeat a terrorist network, you must penetrate it. And that means the old-fashioned espionage operations we did during the Cold War, where we put double agents into the midst of these organizations to see what they're doing. We got to do those three things. We got to do them quickly, and for goodness sake, we have to do them to protect the American people and step aside, let politics go aside.
What's the possibility that there could be an Abaoud already in the U.S.? We know after 9/11 that wasn't an intelligence failure, but
right.
Some people think that it was too late. They were already in the U.S.
Well, my experience was that we were monitoring 2 of the 3 cells which conducted the 9/11 attacks before 9/11, so I know exactly what you're saying, and you're correct. With that said, James Comey has said, and this is James Comey testifying in public statements, has said he's tracking any given day about 1,000 individuals they suspect of being ISIS affiliated, ISIS recruited. So this is no small task. And so if you go with what James Comey is saying publicly, then I would have to believe that there may well be one of these guys, two of these guys already here setting up shop. And I think this is why, again, we have to take seriously what Bill Bratton said about being vigilant. We can't panic, but we have to actually allow our law enforcement, like James Comey and the FBI, to do their job.
All right, former U.S. Army intelligence operative Tony Shaffer, thank you so much, sir, for your analysis.
Sure. Thanks for having me.